Do you have sibilance problems with the 416? Because I do, and it drives me crazy. This stupid mic is so sibilant on me. Let me just show you. Let me take the de-esser out for a second. Sibilance, sibilance, sibilance. Susie sews socks in Saskatoon. Sibilance, sibilance, sibilance. Susie sews socks in Saskatoon. Come on. Tell me that isn't so much better. I love it. This is the SPL DS500 series. Let's talk about it.
From the mind of Mark Yoshimoto Nemcoff.
The Sibilance Killbox, known as the SPL DS500 series, is making the 416 much more usable for me. And that's the thing. This is a voiceover industry standard mic. And I've used it on thousands of commercials, and I don't think I've ever liked the tone I've gotten out of it, because I've always found it to be a little bit too much on the top end, a little too sibilant for me. And no matter what plugin I've used, no matter how I've tried to position the mic or do anything else with it, this is what I get. I get this crispy top end that really just enhances my natural whistly sibilance up there. So when I found the SPL family of de-essers and how they treat these sibilants by not just squashing it and EQing it out, but by hunting it down and phase reversing it and choking it out of its existence, it just snuffs it out. I love that. The Sibilance Killbox. That's what I'm calling this thing, because that's what it does. It is making my life so much better. It is rendering the 416 to be the mic that it always should have been in this booth. Let me just show you again. So this is the natural sound. I'm just going through the Elysia Sculptor into the SPL and then into the MT48. There's nothing else on this. There's no EQ, there's no compression. Just this. So this is terrible. But I'm going to show you how I set this up. So, I mean, if you notice real quick, right? So you've got these different parameters here, right? You've got the low de-essing, and then you've got the high de-essing. And they're set at different thresholds because it makes it really effective across a number of different, I'm sure many different voices, because everybody's voice is different. My voice just happens to be a little bit too sibilant. So I have to use a lot of high de-essing and not as much low de-essing. And what's really cool here is you can turn each of these bands off or on, right? You can enable them, disable them. And here's the master override bypass right here. But then this is cool too, because you have this voicing switch, which allows you to take the center frequency of the low S. And, you know, I wish I remembered what it was. I'm going to put it on the screen. And it takes it, right? And you can raise the center frequency of where the low S is to a higher frequency by switching it to the female voicing. So it's better for high-pitched voices. You know, voices that really don't have as much low-end grit and growl as my voice does, right? Doesn't necessarily mean male or female, just depending on your voice. But that's a really easy way to define it. So let me just reset everything, and I'm going to dial it in for you. So this is really cool, right? So let's just zero everything out. So this is with it. This is how you would find it in the box, right? So make sure your different parts are on right here. So what we're going to do is, just for the purpose of getting this right, I'm going to do the low S first, because the low S is really interesting. Autofocus is killing me. So you can pretty much, you can get a lot of good de-essing with just the low S. But then this is where the lispy part starts. So you get this, right? You can start to sound like Cindy Brady down here. So you get this dial in, right? Just find where you're starting to sound a little bit too lispy there. Just find the lispy point and then dial it back just a little bit. I would say, like, even when you find the lispy point, dial it back like a number, a whole number, like a whole notch. So I'm going from 4 to 3 here. So that sounds pretty good. See, you can see how it's catching that, but it's not affecting the top end, right? The top end, the whistly part. So what I want to do now is I'm going to take the top end, and I'm just going to dial this in until I feel like it's really killing that. Let me just try to get over here. All right, so 5, 6, 7, 8. The wheels on the bus go round and round. She sells seashells by the seashore. So that's a little bit different than how I had it dialed in before, right? But I feel like it's a little too thick at the bottom. So I'm going to dial this back. I'm going to dial this up a little bit more, give myself a little bit more of that. Sibilant, sibilant, sibilant. That's actually sitting pretty good. Let me dial that just back a little bit, because I think, again, it's like when you're dialing it in, you're a little bit too focused on the sound. You're maybe pushing that sibilance a little bit harder than you normally would in conversation, especially for voiceover. So if I take the low S out, right, you may not hear much of a difference, right? So it sounds pretty good. But I like that in there because sometimes you get that low end, like especially like cha, 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 right? When you get the cha and cha sound in there, sometimes you get a little bit of that low end de-essing that sneaks in there. And I think that kills your clarity and detail. So getting it dialed in is pretty easy, right? Just use your ears and just kind of and I've never had this kind of luck with a plugin before. I'm usually just futzing with everything. And I haven't gotten a result that's this natural sounding. So that's why I love this. So here, let me just try this. So is it different here with the male or female voicing? She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. So you see it's catching a little bit more here because it's centered at that lower frequency. So, overall, right? I mean, what did it take to dial that in? Like a minute? It's not a very difficult piece of equipment to use, right? You don't have to pour through the manual to figure out how to use this. So really, if you have a whistly sibilance like I do, you're probably going to lean more on the high S. And if you have a lower husky sibilance, you may lean more on that, right? Obviously. So overall, right, I've been working with the SPL 500 Series De-Esser for a week now on a bunch of commercials and stuff. And I gotta say that this is such a problem solver. This with the 416, I don't think I can use the 416 without it. This is definitely, these two are paired for life. They're mated for life now. The 416 and the Sibilance Killbox. Congratulations. You're mates for life now. I don't know where they're registered, but I'll have to send a card or something. But congratulations. Honestly, I have been trying to find a sound with the 416, a brand sound that I love, right? Because I've used this mic before because it's great at what it does, but I don't like the way it sounds. But now I like the way it sounds. I really do. And I'm going to be using it a lot more. So, do you have sibilance issues with your 416? Because if you do and you have not found a solution yet, I suggest you take a long, hard look at the SPL DS. Because there is a difference between de-essing in the analog realm. I think what you get in the analog realm is something that is more dynamic, right? Because I think the way that analog circuits react to audio is different than the way that audio is treated once it's digitized. So I think if you can get really smooth, nice, natural de-essing before you hit your ADC, right? Before you convert it into digital, I think you're going to get a more pleasing sound. And for me, like any little bit of extra, any little percentage that I can get to make my sound more natural, more, just really more pleasing sounding. Because the last thing, don't you hate it when you're watching TV and you hear a professional commercial for a big brand and the voiceover is sibilant? And you're like, what? I mean, you look at these commercials and you're like, how much money did you spend producing this commercial and you couldn't get a non-sibilant voiceover? Or your voiceover artist couldn't provide that, or your post guy couldn't provide that, right? So I don't want any part of my voiceover to distract from the message of the voiceover, right? I don't want the sound. I want the sound. When you hear the sound, I just want you to hear the message, and I want the message to land. And that's why I think that finding the right de-esser is absolutely essential. And for the 416 and me, this is it. The SPL DS, this is it. I'm so happy with this. So what are you using on your 416? Are you having luck? Are you pleased? Are you pleased with the results that you're getting? I want to know. Because this is my answer. And if anybody asks, how do I de-ess a 416? SPL DS. That's it, baby. All right, tell me what you're thinking. All right, until next time, this is Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov, fading to black.